Hi, folks, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. This is Dr. Charlie Hall, Texas A&M University, holder of the Allison Chair in International Floriculture, and I'm delighted on behalf of my co-webinar organizers, Dr. Marco Palma and Dr. Mungmung Gu, to welcome you to today's broadcast. Of course, I'd be remiss to not mention our sponsors. Both of those have been long-term sponsors of this webinar series. Of course, the Texas Nursery and Landscape Association, and then also the Southern Risk Management Education Center. So thank you to both of those sponsors, which makes this webcast possible. So we've got a very exciting speaker today, but before we get there, let me just give you a little bit of housekeeping. A couple of things that I want to mention. Number one, this is kind of the screen that you see as an overview that's probably something similar to that on your own monitor. And you have some controls over your webinar experience today. In your control panel, you'll see this little orange button that will open and close the panel. So you click on it, it closes. You click it on it again, it opens. All right, so you want a little more viewing area on your screen, you just click on that. If you have any sort of issues, you can always go and use the menu in terms of making it full screen. Now, from an audio standpoint, most folks are using their computer speakers and so forth, and that works out fine 99% of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. So feel free to use the telephone mode. If you click on this use telephone button right there, it'll pop up with a number and then also the code, audio pin, that you will need to enter into the webinar. So if you have any issues, feel free to use that. Now, in terms of questions, this is a unidirectional meeting today in that we're going to be talking at you, but you have the opportunity to interact with both myself and Dr. Pemberton by asking questions in the question dialog box. So as usual, if you have any sort of question, just type it in there. And as we go, and if I see it in time, I'll interrupt Brent and ask him that question. But if not, then we'll wait until the end for the answer those questions. Also, at the very end, there's a very, 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 very short 5-question evaluation survey. You can do it in about 36 seconds. Now, just because it takes a short amount of time to fill out the survey doesn't mean it's unimportant, because it does give us some vital information, and particularly the information that gives us the topics that we need to focus on for future webinars, as well as how well we're doing in presenting information in the current webinar. So those evaluations are important, so please take the time to go ahead and fill that out. Now, if by chance you get called away in the midst of this, a couple of quick things is that I am recording this webinar, and so you can access it from my website. The slide at the end of the webinar today will show you how to do that. And then you'll be sent a link. If you register for today's webinar, you'll be sent a link either in the next 24 to 36 hours with the link to that recording. So no worries if you get called away, or if you happen to miss it, that's how you get hold of it. Now, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce a friend of mine and a distinguished colleague, Dr. Brent Pemberton. Brent is a Texas A&M Regents Fellow and Professor of Ornamental Horticulture and Plant Physiology here at Texas A&M. Now, Regents Fellow stands for a couple things. First of all, he is a jolly good fellow. But more importantly, that means he has been recognized by his peers and the administration here at Texas A&M University as being the best among the best. And so you don't receive that recognition without having distinguished yourself in many different ways here at the university. So it's a distinct privilege to have Brent, and he's known throughout the industry for his plants knowledge. And of course, he has been with us for a couple of webinars before. So I'm going to switch PowerPoints, Brent, and bring yours up. And then I want to turn it over to you, because I know you have a lot of exciting plants to talk about. And we'll get on the road to California dreaming. So Brent, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Charlie. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about plants. And I think Charlie, there will be the plant list that will be. I guess will you post that when you put up the recording of the webinar or
Yes,
whatever?
that's a good point. All the list of the plants that you're going to talk about today, I will post on my website along with the link to the recording. So you'll get all of that in the link in the email message that you get following the email either tomorrow or early the next day.
Okay, excellent. All right. Okay, with the trip to California Spring Trials, for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is a trip that we make every year, and we have lots of different nurseries and seed companies that have grown their materials, all their new crops and that sort of thing for industry folks to come out and take a look at. And basically, it's a trip up the coastal California. From this year, we started in San Diego, Bonsall area, and all the way up to San Jose. So starting out, we did it from the south, and so we started out at Euro American, who had opened up their place for trials this year, which they haven't done in a couple of years. You can see the trial area back in the background here, and this is a rose called Miranda Lambert, which was actually introduced by a company here in Tyler, Certified Roses, so it was nice to see that doing well. And then we also they have a rose series called Sunbelt, and this is the variety called Savannah, which was performing well. And we actually had rain, which was something that we don't normally see very much in pack trials, or spring trials as it's called now. Also, Euro American's known quite a lot for their succulents. This is a new aloe called Sassy Grassy that's looking kind of interesting. And then they also had a nice selection of all different kinds of succulents. The ones that kind of popped out for me was this Dickey of Burgundy Ice, because this species has done pretty well for me here, even hardy up here in northeast Texas. And also they had an echeveria called Celestial Gems Red Planet, which was which I think is really pretty cool, but probably a better container plant for us here, as I think these are a little bit cold tender. They also had the Lobularia Stream White, which was a Texas superstar about a year or so. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. Let's see if it comes up here. There we go. And that series was doing well, and I was glad to hear also that these are available from Euro American. Then we also saw an Enothera that they're testing that came from Mike Arnold's breeding at Texas A&M called Canary Rose, which was very cool, and that's always fun to see a home plant show up in the trials. They had some really nice erysimums. This one called Party, I thought was one that showed real well, which I think is a kind of an underutilized species here. And then they also had a couple of other things. This Kufia Caribbean Sunset caught my eye. It's a little bit unusual, and Kufias do pretty well for us here, so I thought this was pretty interesting to take a look at. And then also salvias catch my eye quite a bit. This is a hybrid, but it looks like it's got some microphylla blood in it. It's ignition purple, so I think this might be something interesting to take a look at. Okay, then from Euro American, we drove up through the Los Angeles basin in the rain and the rush hour of Friday afternoon, which was just a real treat. And anyway, by Saturday morning, we were able to get out to GrowLink, where there were a number of growers showing things. And Florist Holland was showing off the Gerberas. This is the Sweet series, which we've had an interest in. I think they're going to be a plant that needs a little bit of shade in our area, but we're continuing to trial these, and they've got some new colors coming on those. They also are showing, and I wanted to give you a couple of pictures of these patio Gerberas, which are really pretty amazing plants. I'm not expecting them to be garden plants, but I'm thinking that they are an item that would really fit the bill for someone who's doing very high-end specialty type container plants. You know, maybe not necessarily something that's going to last all summer, but something that could certainly give you weeks of color. And the flowers on these are just absolutely spectacular, and I would think would command a pretty nifty price, actually. So that was pretty cool to see. And also at Plant Haven, we ran into our friend Euphorbia Ascot Rainbow and several of the other euphorbias, but this is one we promoted as a superstar years ago, and I noticed it's also available from Euro American, which I think is going to be a good thing for keeping this in circulation. And I just wanted to remind people that this plant is out there. It's great for the winter, and it's also the most heat tolerant of this particular group if you're trying to get it through at least part of the summer. Also at Suntory's Corner, they had the Vinca Soiree series, the Kauai, the coral that you see in the picture there is one that did really well in our trials last year, and they've got more colors of this. And so this is something that's continuing to grow. We also saw another Vinca called the Mega Bloom series. I believe it's Ameriseed. And these are very interesting from it is aptly named because of the size of the flowers. And anyway, it's going to be interesting to see, where this shakes out in the world of Vinca. Also at Athena, Brazil, we saw the Alternanthera Brazilian Red Hots, which will be a new Texas superstar in about a month, and you'll be seeing the promotion come out on that. After GrowLink, it's basically just across town over to Santa Paula to the Ball Horticulture. And this is the entrance to their area. And one of the first things we saw that was really one of the highlights of the entire week was the Begonia Megawatt. We've had Begonia Big, we've had Begonia Whopper, and now we have Begonia Megawatt. So I'm really curious to see how these are going to compare to the Whoppers, which we also just named Texas Superstar, and also to see how this vigor holds up in our heat and sun in Texas. There are the flowers. They're huge, and they present themselves above the foliage like the Whoppers do. So anyway, this is there's really a lot of really neat breeding going on. We met the breeder of this plant, and there's a lot of cool stuff, I think, going to come down in the world of begonias over the next few years. Coleus Dracula. I'm sorry, this isn't a Coleus. This is a well, I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, it's called Dracula. And this looks like a really cool plant. It's not going to be a really big one, and the flowers continue to get big during the summer. And anyway, this looks like it's going to be a real interesting plant, and these do well in our heat and humidity here. There we go. Celosia Dracula. Okay, also with in the Ball Ingenuity section, they were showing off some of the new colors from the Canova series of cannas. These are grown from seed. This is orange shades. There's also a new one called Mango this year, and these are really pretty awesome. What impresses me is that they stay in bloom pretty regularly through the summer, and they don't flush in and out of bloom like a lot of cannas can. They also had a couple of new colors in their Vinca series, the Titans, blush improved and really red. They also had a new ornamental pepper called Hot Pops Purple, which looks like another neat addition to the ornamental pepper world. Though from the name, I think I'd be careful about popping those in my mouth too quickly. They did not have any new colors in the double Zahara zinnias, but they have a new mix, and this is called Brilliant Mixture, which is 3 of the colors that are already in the series. They also had a new color on their Marigold Hot Pack, which is a French type, the Hot Pack Yellow. And then also another addition color in the Lavender series, the Levant's Deep Purple. And I've got this a little bit out of order. This is actually Kieft as opposed to Pan American, but anyway, these things are all from seed. So back to some of the Pan American stuff. They're continuing to expand their Calibrachoa series, the Kablooms. This is experimental pink with eye. Also had a new Coleus from seed called Premium Sun Pineapple Surprise, which is a pretty cool looking plant. They are also still working on these fusibles, which is the whole idea of putting several seed in one pellet so that you can grow a mixed liner, basically, that you can put into a that will develop into a mixed container like this. This is with the Calibrachoa Kabloom series. And they assure me, I'm always after them about developing these types of things with heat-tolerant type species, and they assure me that they're trying to do that, but evidently it's kind of hard to get things like Coleus and Vinca to play well together when you're trying to grow them in the same pot with the same timing and everything. So there's a lot of issues that they deal with when they're trying to put these things together. But I'm sure that we'll eventually see some pretty interesting things come out of this program. They did show some nice annual combos. This is Euphorbia glitz with Petunia shockwave coral and Petunia easy wave yellow. This is a mixed container that I think would do well in our heat. For the most part, and that's what I'm always. There's lots of mixed containers at these trials, but it's hard to find ones that would be really recommended for our heat. Again, this is the Euphorbia glitz and easy wave red velour, which is pretty striking. So you know, you can kind of use your imagination on some of these, and these things are looking pretty cool. As far as the cool season things, they did have a couple of new things. This was a new cool wave, the spreading pansy. It's a new color, Morpho, which is pretty cool. That's a very nice looking plant, makes a nice looking basket. And of course, this is an addition to an already great series. Also, another one, a great thing about this trip is all the people that we get to see and meet. And enjoy renewing acquaintances and finding out about things that are happening in the industry. This is Ockert Gravenstein, who's a Texas A&M graduate, breeder now for Pan American Seed, with one of the new violas that he's in charge of this particular program now. And this is the Sorbet XP Yellow Pink Jump Up, which is a new color in that series this year. Also, in the Ball Horticulture group of companies is Kieft, and they are continuing their theme of developing perennials that don't need vernalization and that grow off and flower first year from seed. This is the latest entry with a Perovskia Blue Steel, which this is a really cool plant, and I'm anxious to see how it's going to do in our heat. But you can see it on the right. The one on the left is one that's typical of what's out there, and the one on the right is the blue steel, and you can see the bushiness, and it is also coming into flower at a nice small stage too. So anyway, that looks like a nice improvement. The Gaillardia Mesa series is expanding, and then what they've done is they've added a red. And they've got some very nice colors. The yellow and the peach have been nice, but now they have a red to add to the series, and that's going to help broaden out the color availability within that series. Moving over to, oh, I'm sorry, there's a couple of things I left off the list here. I'll have to add these. This is a coreopsis called Sunkiss from Kieft, and this is usually a good species for us. And being able to grow these things from seed is something that I think is going to be advantageous for our growers here. And now we'll move over to the vegetative. This is the Nigini impatiens called Big Bounce Pink. It's actually an interspecific, and the Big Bounce series has done quite well for us. And this addition of the new color is a good thing to see coming with this particular series. Also, another color in the Verbena Endurascape series with the pink bicolor, and this is a very bushy, a little bit more bushy than some of the other members of this series, and also I've found to be very heavy flowering, as you can see in this photo here. So it's quite a striking plant. So I think we're going to see more of that. Angelonia, the Archangel series, they've got a new blue bicolor, which I think is very interesting. This kind of a new color break in Angelonia. And then also, we couldn't have spring trials without new coleus. This is one called Inferno, which is a very cool color. It'll be interesting to see how this color holds up in our heat, but I think it's worth taking a look at. And then I think one that should do well for us is one called French Quarter. Is it coming up? There we go. In the background there, and that one I think is very aptly named and is going to do well in our heat. Another coleus that we have is one from the Flamethrower series. It's called Habanero. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Ruby Slippers. I almost missed that one. Now this one is, you know, Big Red I think it was Big Red Judy was the one that's been out. This one is Ruby Slipper. It's a richer color leaf, and also it's not quite as large of a grower. And so I think this one's going to really fill a nice niche when it comes to the coleus. Now this is one from the flamethrower series called Habanero, which has a smaller leaf with the serrated edge that is pretty cool, and it's got a lot of neat colors in it. And then a species that I was really happy to see this show up. Mecrodonia is a species that has done real well in the heat, and it's nice to see a new one come out. So this is one called Little Sunshine. Also, Selecta has got a new phlox called Giselle Hot Pink, and they feel like they've solved some of the production problems that this type of phlox has had in the past, and I hope they have, because that's always been the issue. These are great in the garden, but they've been really tough to try to get them through the production stage from a watering standpoint and also the root development and everything. Okay, also it wouldn't be spring trials without getting new petunias, and here we have from Ball Flora Plants some new petunias. As you can see, these are spreading. They are vegetative, and so we'll see what another petunia series does with us here. They did show some vegetative combos. This is one that I thought looked like it might work for us. They've got Angelonia, Mecrodonia, and also a Lantana Lucky Lavender. All should be good heat tolerant plants. And then this is actually, I got this out of order too. This is grown from seed and Pan American, and it's called Mini Mint. And it's an ornamental mint. This is not one that you can eat, but with the popularity of fairy gardens and that sort of thing, this is actually a way cool looking plant. So, I mean, you had to stop and take a look at this. It's nice display. So anyway, I think that's an interesting niche that that plant would fit into. We also saw some interesting stuff with the vegetables. They had a big emphasis on container vegetables, which we've seen at other nurseries such as Florinova in the past, and a lot of breeding is moving in that direction with vegetables. They are looking at different combos of vegetables, call them space savers. They've got, for example, 2 different kinds of tomatoes in one container that they're promoting. And there's some different varieties that they've tested that play well together when you're doing that. And then some other species that they've done, and they were just showing some interesting marketing examples. And then new basil here called Pesto Party, and you can see Paul Winsky in the background there, one member of our group that came with us. Then out to Darwin Perennials, they had a Salvia greggii series, the Mirage series, that kind of caught my eye, that is new, and because that's an important species for us here. And then also a new Coreopsis, again, another important species. But these are vegetatively propagated. So anyway, okay. After moving up from Santa Paula, then we go up to the Pismo Beach, San Luis Obispo area, and out at Edna Valley. This is Dooman Orange, one of the 2 stops that they had. And I just wanted to show you a picture of these mixed containers, and that is the setting for this place in the background. It's really quite beautiful, very dramatic. I think it's one of the nicer venues that we go to on these trials, and that's always fun and makes it very pleasant experience to look at all the different kinds of plants. We also saw a lot of mixed containers with the HGTV collection, and they had, again, some things that looked like they might work well for us with the cannas and scavola and lantana mixed together. They had a whole new series there of New Guinea impatiens. This is the Sun Standing series. These are kind of a sun patiens type series, and so it'll be interesting to take a look at these. Of course, these do not really stand up to completely full sun for us, but they will take a half a day of like morning sun or whatever, which is a pretty cool thing with a lot of different locations that we have. They've also added to their New Guinea impatiens other series, the Magnum series. This is a new color called Clear Pink, 17. And then they also showed us a new series of Portulaca. This is one called Color Blast Lemon Twist, and there are several in here, and they're kind of unique in that they have the two-tone with the white and on this, and they've got some other colors in this type. We've got about 48, I think, different entries from about 6 or 7 different series of these in our trials this summer. There's been quite a few new ones come out in recent couple of years, and so we wanted to take a look at those. So that's going to be fun to look at this summer. Also, more coleus. This is a new one in their Main Street series called Michigan Avenue, which I think is pretty striking. And then, of course, they had on display a couple of the ones in this series that I think are good ones for us. This is one called Main Street Wall Street, and then another one, of course, called Riverwalk, which you know, how could you be a Texan and not be without this one, right? So that's a great coleus. A new color in the Peppy series with the petunias. This is a trailing petunia type. These Peppys have done fairly well, and they've got the pinwheel pattern in them, which is cool. And this is the new Peppy Pink. Excuse me. And also the in the same vein, the Peppy Piccola strawberry, which is a similar flower pattern, but it's got a more compact plant, but it's got and the smaller flowers, which come in abundance, which I think is going to be very neat for landscaping for us. So interesting development on this one. And then also a couple of new colors in the Fortunia series for petunia, and then also a couple of interesting new geraniums. There's this new brocade series that they have, and there's one called Brocade Fire. Well, we'll hope it pops up here in a minute.
There it is.
Well, there we go. Well, the Brocade Fire is it's neat in that it's got this unusual leaf pattern, and you can see one of the dark ones back to the left there. And I wasn't sure that these would take the heat very well, but Kaylee Decker was traveling with us from Dallas Arboretum, and she said that they had this one out there, and it's looking pretty good. So anyway, I'm kind of encouraged by this because this is a really unusual color to come out in something that might be more tolerant of the heat. They also had a new color of the Savannah series, the Cerise Sizzle. This is a pretty good vigorous series, and so it's nice to see a new color come out. Fairly tolerant, heat tolerant for us as geraniums go. And we've also had a new series there of called Havana of Lantana. And anyway, these I think are going to be for next year, so it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we can get those for trial next year. Be interesting to see how they do here. Okay, then they have a second location up at Barrel House near Paso Robles, and this is where they have more of their perennial type items. And this was their herb assortment that they had, which they had quite a few of. Very nice selection of different things. And then they had some new things. This is some new Delosperma, the Jewel of the Desert series. And anyway, I'm thinking, of course, this will do probably better in Central Texas and further west than where I am in Northeast Texas. But anyway, this is interesting, probably for rock gardens and that sort of thing. So maybe kind of a niche plant, but it fits in the succulent mode, which is becoming very popular, of course. And then we also saw some new salvias. This is one called Caramia. It's a Nemorosa type, but it looks a lot more vigorous than some of the other Nemorosa types, which could be a good thing for us. This is also a Nemorosa type called Spring King, and anyway, pretty heavy flowering, and long flower spikes. So this is another thing that I think we could get kind of excited about down here. They also had a selection of Coreopsis, and they had a new one called Sun Swirl, which looked pretty nice. And of course, Coreopsis is a good species for us. And then they also had a new Gaillardia that I think is going to be interesting to take a look at, called Spin Top Yellow Touch, which I thought was quite showy, and anyway, pretty cool flowers on that one. There's also, they have a lot of dianthus. They have several different series that we need to take a look at, and different sizes. And it's interesting, Diantha. Sometimes they'll surprise you, and you'll find one in some of these groups that do real well for us, at least as a short-term perennial. And so anyway, I think that's something that is worth watching. They also had some new calendulas, and I'm not real sure how these are going to react to our summer. But so this may be more of a fall winter type item for us. But these look like pretty beefy plants, and look like we've got some trailers and things like that. In addition to you know, the upright bushy forms. And so I think these are going to be something that are definitely worth taking a look at. They also had on display the XXL dahlias, and I've said for a couple of years now that I think this is one of the best dahlias that I've ever trialed, and it seems to hold up well. And I've even had some over winter for me up here in Northeast Texas. This is one called Durango, which is a very beautiful yellow. The Tajco is a very pretty one, and then also Veracruz, I think, is one of my favorites. I like these because they have really nice size flowers. They look like a dahlia, and they're moderate sized plants. They're not the really big ones, but these are nice. They do well in containers. So anyway, there's a lot to recommend with this group of dahlias. They were also showing a lot of perennial combos. That I think is kind of interesting. It seems to be, you know, everybody's moving towards combos, and so I guess it was a natural that perennials would move in that direction also. This is a nice combo that I think would work for us in Texas with the daisies and gaillardia and the salvia and coreopsis. It's not something that, of course, is going to be in color all summer long, because this is a perennial and they do have their season of bloom, but these four species are ones that look like they're going to play well together in a combo. So, you know, this is something, a concept that I think is worth taking a look at. They also had a beautiful succulent display. You know, we've seen the wine bottles at Euro American, and they took this one to another level with the beer bottles, and they actually have these cut. You can take the lid off and put water in, and then they've got a little drainage slit cut into these things at the bottom. So it's somewhat practical from that standpoint as well. Then they also had a couple of projects here that I thought were way cool. I mean, who wouldn't want that out on their patio? Beautiful display of succulents, and then they also put them on a big wall display right next to it. Is it popping up for you? There we go. Nice wall display. And anyway, so there's a lot of really creative things that are being done with succulents these days, and those are a couple of good examples. Very nice. Okay, then we moved on up to the Salinas area, and this is at Cicada, and they were celebrating the 10th year birthday of the Sun Patients introduction. And so they had some really nice displays, of course, of the Sun Patients, and they do have some new colors. They've got the compact orchid and compact tropical rose. I think the tropical rose is particularly exciting because even if these go a little bit out of bloom in the summer, the variegated foliage really carries the day, and they're very striking. And then also they have spreading pink kiss on the left and compact fire red, which is a real fire engine red. So anyway, that was a nice addition. You can even get a car decorated with Sun Patients for all you folks who have everything. And then they also had a new Gomphrena series. They've done the pinball series in the past, which has been a really cool series, and then this is the ping pong series with the 3 different colors. They didn't have any new colors in the Profusion series, but they did announce their slick coat seed coating for this crop, which makes the seed excuse me, slip better in using mechanical planters. Another thing they were celebrating were the use of the Profusion zinnias as the first flower grown in space, and so that was pretty cool for all you Trekkie fans out there. We thought that was a pretty pretty neat thing to be able to lay claim to that. So we're also still interested in the Celosia Dragon's Breath. We saw this for the first time last year. And I think there's probably still some production issues as far as photoperiod goes with this plant, but I think this is something that that we need to take more of a look at because it's becoming, I think, more available and is a really cool plant. And I think maybe even especially for fall for us. Okay, across town, moving over to Taki. This is the Salvia Summer Jewels series. They've been adding colors over the last couple of years, and the new one this year is a lavender. And it looks to be pretty nice. It looks like the flowers are even a little bit bigger than some of the other ones in the series, so they may be moving in that direction also. But these are Salvia coccinea types and do quite well in our heat. So I, I think this is an important series for us. They also had a very nice display of a lot of their cannas. A lot of this cannas for seed breeding is coming from Taki. The Canova series that I mentioned from Ball, and also the Soul series from Duman, both came from Taki. And so this is something I think that's very important for our market. They also had a new color of the Trilogy petunias, and it's deep purple. And I think this is an excellent use for the Trilogy series. They've got the red, white, and blue patriotic mix that looks great in containers also. So anyway, this is a really neat way to use those. They also had a beautiful display, which reminds us that Taki also has a huge vegetable division, and these are some of the Asian vegetables that they had on display. And then they also had a succulent display. Beautiful example of the production that you can get, and I really like these things too that are put together, and this type of thing is becoming very popular too, and I think something that a lot of independent garden centers are doing as special type things. So anyway, I think there's a niche market for this sort of thing. People really like the succulents. Also, the Sunflower series of Dianthus was on view, and Kaylee Decker found one called Kaylee. So I have a feeling we may be seeing some of this over at the Dallas Arboretum. Not often that you'd find one with your name on it like that. So anyway, that was pretty cool. Then on up to the Gilroy area at Syngenta. And there were a couple of really important things that we saw at Syngenta. I think this falling star, it's a trailing type pentas that I found very interesting. That I think we will see more of. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I can imagine doing with this, from mixed containers, baskets, etc. So anyway, this was an interesting development. And then also, they're beginning to expand the Calliope series. They've got Calliope medium now, in addition to the Calliope large. So this is something that's happening that's going to be good for us, because these are heat tolerant interspecific geraniums, and so I think these are going to be great. Let's get to the next one. There's that Pink Splash is a really beautiful new variety in this series, but they've got all these different colors. There we go. There's all the colors in the medium series, part of it anyway, part of the medium of the Calliope series, and then this is the new pink flame, which is really pretty striking. They also do have the large, still have the large Calliopes, and they're continuing to expand those. There's Tim Davis on the left there, who has also joined our group for part of the trip. And this Calliope large pink is the new color that's in that particular series. At a new location just up the road from Syngenta is Proven Winners, and they also have quite a striking venue here, and it was really beautiful. They also were able to use all of these to their advantage with some of their plant material, which I'm sure is in the contract for those folks to keep around for a while after they leave. Would be if I was negotiating it. they had some fun new stuff. This was the Supertunia Charm series, which I have become enamored with, and the Daymorn Charms, or Daylight Charms, or I can't remember exactly, but the one up on the right is the new color, and some of these other ones are ones that that we've seen before. But so that's a cool new addition to that series. And they also have improved their Superbena Royal Peachy Keen, which was just really unbelievable. The one that they had did okay for us, but it wasn't as good as some of the other Superbenas, like the Coral, for instance. And so anyway, I just, with the way this thing packs in the flowers, I was really impressed. And so I'm hoping that the improved vigor and flowering that they have for this will translate into more heat tolerance for us for this particular color, because it really is a beautiful plant. Got a close-up of the flowers. It should be popping up. There we go. And then they've also got, they're expanding their Sweet Carolyn series of Ipomoea. There is now one called Bewitched After Midnight, and the Bewitched section of this series is, if you'll recall, they've got the rugose leaves. They are a little bit more compact growing, though these are all still sweet potatoes, ornamental sweet potatoes, so they're still pretty vigorous. But After Midnight's the one up on top. The new leaves are green, so some people like the two-tone, some people don't. Seem to be a little bit of a difference of opinion there. But anyway, I think this will continue to be a good series for us. And then they've added a green one, which is called Bewitched Green with Envy, that has the very rugose leaf and the same growth habit that the Bewitched has had. They've also expanded. There's the other section of this series is the Sweetheart section, and these are a little bit smaller leaves, a little bit more heart-shaped, and this one is called Jet Black. And then they also showed a new Angelonia series, which was a really sturdy, stout-looking series. So it's going to be interesting to see how big these are going to get in our gardens. It's Angel Face, called Perfectly Pink. Really thick stems, big flowers. So anyway, it's pretty interesting looking plant. Those are big flowers for an Angelonia. They had a new Artemisia this year, a foliage plant, which is a big silver plant, and I'm hoping that it's supposed to be very heat and humidity tolerant, so I'm hoping that that is the case, because these kinds of silvery plants can be very useful in ground and containers and that sort of thing. So it's nice to see this one come on. And then also they keep doing things to these Calibrachoas that really make me starting to like Calibrachoa, which I didn't used to admit to that. But this is the Super Bell's Morning Star, which I think is very pretty. The little bit larger flowers, and the two-tone is lovely. And then they've improved the Super Bell's Yellow, which is on the top, and then the old one is down on the bottom down there, so you can see the heavy flowering. So we'll see if this translates into heavier flowering during the summer, which would be great for this plant. They keep improving this plant, so we're getting to where we have Calibrachoas that do somewhat well for us. This is a new Cyperus called Prince Tut. You can see the King Tut on the left, which is a big one. This one's more compact and has more bushy heads on it, and so this one's going to be kind of a neat plant, to use for water gardening and that sort of thing. Another big development for them this time were not new plants, but they've gone back and they have worked on reselecting some plants like Vista Bubblegum. This is a great petunia for us, very heat tolerant. And they've gone back and selected it for habit and to get it back to the original color. And they've also done some selection on the Vista Fuchsia, which is another great plant for us, and also Vista Silverberry. So now these three are somewhat matched as far as habit and flower timing and size and everything. And that's where you get these beautiful baskets with the three colors mixed together, because these particular three colors play well together when you put them in a pot now, instead of one outgrowing the other. So they had some really beautiful displays of these, showing off how they do. And so anyway, I was quite impressed with that. And I think this is something that could be very useful for us here in Texas, because all three of these petunias are extremely heat tolerant for us and hold up very well in our heat trials. Okay, moving over to Watsonville. We went to Veneri. They've got all kinds of begonias. This is the big series. We've also got the Whoppers, which we just named a Texas Superstar. And then we've also got, let's see, what other begonias do we have here? The Sun Cities collection. These are Boliviensis types, which are actually very cool. They do pretty well in our heat and as container plants in the shade, but the big thing about these is you can't overwater them. If you do, they'll rot. But I've had some of these even last for a couple of years if you dry them off and treat them like a tuberous begonia. But that being something for a gardener, I mean, these are really cool plants and very unusual looking begonias that I think would create a lot of interest at retail for people. They've also are showing this off as a breakthrough on tuberous type begonias. This is one called Funky Pink. So that's going to be interesting. It's got nice flowers and supposed to be more heat tolerant. And then they've also revamped they've got the Sprint Plus series now, which is supposed to be very rapid growing, but this is more of a cocktail type. Anyway, something that I think that you'll see continue more, but very uniform and very, very rapid to flower for begonias, which is something, as you know, can be a challenge with some series. They also have the Petunia Success series. And there's 3 new colors, pink chiffon, pink vein, and coral. They were also featuring their Impatiens Lollipop series. They indicate that they've had some increased sales in Impatiens despite the downy mildew issues that we've had over the past few years. And also they had out Bellis Speedstar Mix, which is a plant that I think is underutilized for winter here. So this is something that I wanted to put back into people's minds as something that we can use, and sell to complement pansy sales in the fall. They also had a couple of very interesting looking salvias. This is the Farina series. This is one called Arctic Blue, and there's also one called Violet. And you can see how the flowers are really packed on here, so that they have a real thick appearance, but they seem to stand up well also, which you would think there'd be a lot of weight on that, but a very sturdy stems. So anyway, I thought that was a new interesting development with Salvia farinacea. They also had this Thunbergia Arizona Lemon Surprise that I thought was pretty cool. It's a new color in this type of plant, and so nice new vine to add to that group. Then we moved over to Pacific Plug and Liner, which was actually our last stop on the trip, but we always see some really interesting different things. The gray foliage plant you see in the center of this picture is called Stachys bellagrigio, which is one of those plants I'm not sure is going to do well in our heat and humidity, but it may do well further west, down in central Texas with really good drainage, or even out on the high plains as a container plant during the summer where you've got a little bit cooler nights and not so much on the relative humidity. And they also had a nice display of ornamental grasses and caryxes that they have, and also beautiful displays of Echinacea, which is a cross between Echinacea and Rudbeckia, and also the Salvia amistad. Get this to pop up in just a minute here. There we go. That's the 2 of them together. And anyway, I think April Herring, who's also an A&M graduate, is out there now, and I think she helped put a lot of these displays together. There's the Echinacea, and then we've also got the Amistad Salvia, which is pretty nice, and reports it to do well down here in our area. Also saw some interesting new things with the Southern Garden Plant Collection at this location. There's a plant that was new to me called Lomandra. This is one called Platinum Beauty that should take our hot, humid summers. So anyway, this is something that I think we need to take a look at. I also saw a new lavender, and I'm always skeptical of lavenders, but this was a different species of lavender than I've been familiar with. It's a variety called Merlot. And anyway, this one is supposed to be heat and humidity tolerant. So I've heard that before with lavender, but I think this one's worth taking a look at because it's so unusual that I think it bears some attention. Then we had there were a couple of new salvias that we saw. There's one called Little Kiss that in this next picture is up at the top, and at the bottom of it is one called Killer Cranberry. And I've seen these. I've seen the Killer Cranberry once before, and anyway, these look like they've got some microphylla in them, and they, I've had pretty good luck with those types of salvias before. So these I think are worth watching, and we could have an interest in. And also this new Dianella called Clarity Blue that I thought was really beautiful, with the broad kind of bluish green leaves, which is a little bit different than some of the other Dianellas that we've seen in the past. And then I wanted to conclude the talk by showing just a couple of slides here of some of, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the Stachys, the one called Lilac Falls. This is a species that I've found to be pretty heat tolerant. So anyway, it caught my eye and something that I'm trying to get a hold of. But I also, then I wanted to end the talk just showing you a couple of slides of some different places that we went. We go to the nurseries, but we also try to take in some gardens, and of course food is a big thing. This is Cynthia McKinney and Mung Mungu at Balboa Park down in San Diego at the beginning of the trip. And also at the end of the day, after we did Euro-American, we drove up to Los Angeles and went to the Getty Museum, which is just an unbelievable place. This is just one of the buildings out of all the ones that are there. There's we kind of ran through a little bit of the artwork because we didn't allow ourselves very much time. This was the Irises by Van Gogh, which was a highlight of the museum. But then the gardens around the museum are just really pretty amazing, and this one was very impressive. It's a beautiful gem of a garden. It is actually a collector's garden. There's a number of species in here that are very unusual, but they're also put together and artfully done. And anyway, I'd really like to meet the person who did this garden and who takes care of it, because it is an exquisite gem that I think you need to try to go see if you can. I also let's see, I mentioned food. This is Danish pancakes at Paula's Pancake House in Solvang, which is an awesome place to eat breakfast. Also in the same town, there's all kinds of pretty things, and this is Alicia Patridge and Cynthia McKinney admiring the echeverias that are growing in the window boxes there. Things like this make us stop the car and get out and take pictures. We also went up to Half Moon Bay at the end of the trip. Oh, I want to mention Alicia Patridge is a student that Cynthia brought. Cynthia has brought a lot of students on this trip and introduced them to the world of horticulture, ornamental horticulture, and anyway, you'll see them in the industry, and it's really a great way to open their eyes to all of these things. These are some nurseries. It's like a strip mall of little independent garden centers in Half Moon Bay, and this is one that sells only carnivorous plants, and that's Genwan Nu from El Paso, who was with us back in the back taking pictures. But it's just an amazing place. I mean, I've never seen a place where you could buy stuff like this, especially in these little landscapes like this and everything. So that's pretty unique. And then also along the trip, we always take a moment, some time to do beach moments, and this is one at Half Moon Bay. And so anyway, with that, I'll end the talk, and I guess we made it through all these slides, Charlie.
Outstanding. That I'm just amazed at how you go through so many plants and talk about each one so enthusiastically. That's amazing. So thank you, Brent. There are a couple of questions that some of them you answered along the way. One question was, have there been any trials on disease resistance for the Vinca megabloom?
That I'm not sure about. I want to say that I did hear while I was there that they do have some disease resistance, but I have not tested them, and I haven't seen them tested. Probably a more important place to test them would be in a place like College Station, or where we have the heavy soils, where we might see, or over in the Dallas area. So anyway, now that, to my knowledge, I haven't seen those tested in our area specifically for the disease.
Okay. And here's one I didn't catch in time while you were talking about the euphorbias, but one question was, what are the other euphorbias with ascot rainbow?
There was one there called Tiny Tim, which is the one with the bluish green foliage, and then there's one I think called Ruby Glows, which is the one with the redder foliage.
Uh-huh.
All of those are really great plants for winter. They take the cold temperatures. Um, the thing that has stood out about Ascot Rainbow is that it is more heat tolerant, and I've actually had it go through a summer here in Northeast Texas, and Cynthia has pretty good with them out in Lubbock too. When we've looked at that as part of our Texas Superstar program.
Awesome. Well, I think all the other questions you answered as you went through all the slides. A number of folks are saying thank you so much for the great information, and a number of other comments very similar to that. Very cool, so forth. So, Dr. Pemberton, as usual, you did a bang up job with this webinar, and so thank you very much. And I would like
Oh, well,
to,
thank you, Charlie. It's a pleasure.
yeah, I'd like to remind folks that you'll be able to see the recording of this webinar on the webinars page for the Allison Chair, and you see the link there at the top of the screen that you have in front of you, allisonchair.tamu.edu/multimedia/webinars. And so that'll be up there along with the plant list, although I think you mentioned that you needed to tweak that list with a couple that you had inadvertently left out. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll do that real quick and send that to you so you have it. There were just a couple
Yep.
that I got one name wrong and I think I left one out. So
Okay. All
that'll
right.
only take a minute to fix that up.
All right. As soon as I get that from you, then I'll upload that when the recording is finished uploading and so forth. And again, you'll be receiving a link in an email within the next 36 hours that will take you to the recording site, or you can check back here on this web page. One last thing, as I mentioned earlier, there's a very short evaluation just as soon as we close out here. So if you would take the 36 seconds to go through that, I'd appreciate it. And we'll see you the next webinar. Thank you again, Brent. Great job.
Thanks, Charlie.